What's going on, everyone? Happy Friday. It is October the 18th. Wow, this October's flying by quickly. And I think it's going to be a pretty good month for video games. This month we've had Metaphor Refantasio. End of the month we're going to have Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Dragon Age Veilguard. I don't know if I pronounced. Yes, Dragon Age Veilguard as well. So, hey, good time to be a gamer. Good time to be a gamer. Anyhow, welcome to the show, everyone. Game Logic will be joining us here shortly. And we're going to discuss, I mentioned Call of Duty Black Ops 6 launching into or releasing end of this month. I mean, it is a big release. Not just yearly release, but it's really a big release. What I think is a significant test to Game Pass. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about that, how Call of Duty Black Ops 6 may be a make or break for Game Pass, potentially. We'll get that in here in a little bit. We'll discuss the Xbox partner preview from earlier in the week. But I do want to welcome everyone to the show, everyone in the live chat. Thank you for joining us live. Please do me a favor. I'm going to drop a link here in the live chat. Please retweet the link. Share it on your favorite social media platform. Let everyone know we're live. All right, so I do want to, if you didn't catch last week's show, or to say last week's show, this week's show, we had Creative Kofi on, we had Nate on, we had a great conversation around RPGs, JRPGs in particular. We discussed Metaphor Refantasio quite a bit, which is currently, look, it's my game of the year. I said it on Wednesday's show. Saying it again, it is my game of the year right now. It's such a great game. I cannot stop playing it. That's how good it is. So, what's going on, Def Floyd? I really can't stop playing it. It's such a good game. It's such a good game. So, I will be playing, as you can imagine, I'll be playing Metaphor Refantasio this week. Sam C says, all right, BRAP, I'll pick up the game too. Sam C, if you play Persona 5 or any of the other Persona games or Shingami Tensei, I would imagine you might like this game. Yeet! What's up, True Serum? Yeet. Oh, I love it. I wonder if they're going to let... I always forget, is it Jey Uso? I think it's Jey Uso, right? Yeah, if they're going to let Jey Uso back into the bloodline. Guess we'll find out tonight. Friday night SmackDown. Look, Mustang Gamer says Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is game of the year, FYI. Yeah, I mean, look, I have seen others share that same perspective as you, Mustang Gamer. I could see that. It was actually my game of the year up until Metaphor Refantasio. But I think as Logic has shared with me, at least for the Keeleys, JRPGs typically don't win game of the year. All right, let me retweet the link here. BRAP is live. All right. Yeah, and I'm seeing I love Atlas put out a tweet, best RPG of 2024. They say venture to the United Kingdom of Uchronia now to see why fans and critics alike can't stop talking about Metaphor Refantasio. I'm one of those individuals. I cannot wait to play Metaphor Refantasio. All right, so I want to discuss the Xbox partner preview, and they had some. I thought it was a decent showing. I enjoyed some of the stuff they showed there. Wu-Chang Fallen Feathers actually really piqued my interest. Let me just run on a list of some of the games they showed. Alan Wake 2, The Lake House. This is an expansion. It'll launch actually in 4 days. And then we got a cinematic trailer for Bloober Team's new game. I give a big shout out to Bloober Team. They are the studio behind Silent Hill 2 remake, and they, according to critics, did a really good job with that. Hey, what's going on, Ice Queen Gaming? What's up, Mary Wilcox? Player says, do you think Microsoft having the marketing rights for the game did anything for the platform? Anything for Xbox? What do you mean by platform? Are you asking if I think Microsoft having the marketing rights for Metaphor v Fantasio did anything for Xbox or for the actual game itself and sales? What do you mean, player? All right, Logic should be here soon. So they show Chronos: The New Dawn. It's a survival horror adventure game, and it puts players in the boots of the Traveler, a mysterious individual tasked with finding individuals who died during a devastating apocalypse and extracting them from the past. So it looks interesting. Although, I'm really not, I got to be in the mood to play like survival horror games. It looks interesting, though. Hopefully it turns out being a good game. Bloober Team's track record hasn't been stellar per se, but, definitely this is definitely another game that sort of piqued my interest here. And then we got footage of Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. This is a spin-off game. Looks interesting. Not probably something that I'll play. We also get an announcement for Blindfire. It's out early access now. It's a new first-person arena shooter that turns all the lights for players. You'll need to rely on your senses, equipment, and abilities if you want to survive. So it's now actually out in the Xbox Game Preview program. I may check that out. That looks kind of interesting. We have an announcement for Dark sequel to Subnautica 2. It's going to launch on Xbox Series X and S, Windows PC. I can't even talk. I can't even talk today. And Windows PC via the Xbox Game Preview program in 2025. We also got a look at Eden Zero, which is based on the manga and anime series created by Fairy Tales Hiro Mishima, and this is the first big game adaptation for that series, and so they showed that. We also saw Phasmophobia. My understanding, I guess it was popular when it launched on PC about 4 years ago. For those who don't know what Phasmophobia is, it's a 4-player co-op psychological horror game where players have to hunt down ghosts. There's some puzzle-solving elements, horror elements in the game. We also got Animal Well. You can grab that right now. Also, we saw Mouse Pie for Hire. Looks like the old, like 1930s cartoons in terms of its visual aesthetic. Player says, I agree, Mary. When people talk about having marketing rights make a big deal for a platform, I don't think it does. What's going on, Game Logic? I'm hearing myself echo, by the way, Logic, on your end. All right, so give me a sec. I want to go back to what player said.
What's up, BRAP?
Oh, what's going on, Hamp?
Much, man.
All right, so player is asking about, do you think Microsoft having the marketing rights for Metaphor ReFantazio did anything for the platform? Mary Wilcox said probably not. I would agree with that. But I think not for the reasons that player thinks. Player's replies, I agree, Mary. When people talk about having marketing rights make a big deal for a platform, I don't think it does. And then he says, so we in agreement that marketing rights don't matter for a platform. If it's a multi-platform game. I mean, tell that to Call of Duty. The impact it had on PlayStation.
I think that has something to do with the property, right? It's not just. I mean,
I think
this probably didn't.
Just, yeah, I'm sorry. I bet you Call of Duty, but I also think it has to do with the platform, the consumer of that platform, and the fact that like there are instances where certain games do sell better on platforms. You know, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I don't think it has. I mean, I don't think it did a lot for Metaphor ReFantazio. People were going to know about that game regardless because of the pedigree of Atlas. So, I mean, marketing in that case, in that scenario, the marketing rights do something good for your constituents and the people you have already sold to, right? Mm-hmm. The people who are on your platform and pay attention to you when you talk now are more aware of this game, particularly in the JRPG genre, coming to your platform, particularly given the fact that JRPGs have a tendency to, in many cases, skip Xbox. For a single case title, I think that's the type of effect you get. When it is a title of longevity, like you were saying, Call of Duty, or it'll be super interesting to see if anybody gets favored marketing rights for GTA 6. Those types of things will move the needle because you have a large constituent base who's heavily invested in those IPs. And so they will be more prominently affected by that type of dynamic, I think.
Yeah, he's saying I was addressing everyone talking about how important to have marketing rights, but I yet to see that make a difference for Xbox. I mean, I think previous generations, I think there's been some impact to Xbox. I go back to Call of Duty again with that one, and maybe some other titles, but I just think there's probably different reasons why we don't see that impact maybe on Xbox as we did maybe previous generations on the Xbox. And I think in part that's lower install base, the introduction of Game Pass now, things like that. I'm not arguing that marketing rights like sell like millions and millions of, hardware units to new consumers, but I do think there's some potential knock-on effect. Oh, Logic, did you watch the Xbox? Because I'm actually discussing this right now. The partner preview.
No.
Okay, I'm going over some of the games right now. Did you look at the list of games they showed?
No.
Okay. All right. They also showed off The Legend of Babu. They also showed Internal Strands. Now, Internal Strands is actually is it Yellow Brick Studios? It's like Mike Laidlaw, a couple other people from BioWare that are working on this game. So that this is actually be a day one release on Game Pass next year. So that was announced. And also Remedy announced FBC Firebreak. This game is going to actually kind of it's a multiplayer type game. It's a first person PvE game. It's set in the Control universe. That's coming out 2025. And they also showed Mistfall Hunter. This is actually a PvPvE extraction type game with RPG elements mixed into it. So I thought that looked kind of interesting. And then they showed off Wheel World and Wu Chang Fallen Feathers. This one actually really piqued my interest. It's actually set in the late Ming Dynasty, and the trailer showed some of the game's combat, some of its horrifying enemies, this is kind of a dark fantasy like action adventure game is what it looked like. But I'm interested in this one. I'm interested to see more of this one. So those are the games. I kind of I enjoyed some of the stuff they showed here. I'm not going to give it a score. I saw people giving it a score. I'm just not going to do that for the partner preview program. I like some of the things they showed, so I'll leave it at that. I see a couple of people in the live chats. Koa, whatever your name is, Kokoro said Wu Chang looked amazing. The Fox Boss design peak. Yeah. So, Ham, I got to ask you, man, are you, I know we talked about this before, but are you picking up Black Ops 6 day one?
No.
No interest, huh?
No.
Yeah, I'm on the fence myself. I'm not sure if it's because there's so many games right now. You've heard me rant and rave about Metaphor ReFantazio. I can't stop playing it. It's really good. So I don't know. I may download it and just give it like an hour. I'm more interested in playing the campaign. I don't know if I want to dive into the multiplayer just yet. Campaign looks interesting because the trailer showed Ronald Reagan, Cold War, stuff like that. That's kind of interest to me. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to pick it up day one or not. We'll see. I may download it. I don't know. Get it through Game Pass. We'll see. With that being said, Hamp, this is so. I mean, I think you would agree with me, Hamp. This is the biggest game ever released in Game Pass. Day one Game Pass, right? And we all know about the $75 billion acquisition of ABK.
Why does it keep growing every time you mention it, man?
Is it 70? I don't know. I always say 70, 75.
It was 70.
70. I'm sorry. You're right. It does grow. Sometimes when I mention it,
I think that does happen for some people. It's 68 billion, then 70 billion, out 75. It'll be 78. By the time we're talking about next year, it'll be an $80 billion acquisition.
Yeah. I mean, it's the biggest. I mean, it is the biggest launch into the Game Pass subscription service. It just is. I mean, and it probably will be moving forward every year. I don't. There's just not another game that they would that's going to launch in Game Pass. It's going to be this big. But I do think this is a significant test, Hamp, with Game Pass, the Game Pass model. We know that Microsoft is hoping that this drives subscription numbers. We know that subscription numbers have more or less stalled, and not just with Game Pass. We know that this has happened with other subscription services. We know that because Circana has reported on that previously. But I really do think, Hamp, and there was a great article, by the way, GameIndustry.biz. If you don't read GameIndustry.biz, I encourage you. I think they're as I say this all the time, the last bastion of really good gaming journalism. They had a great op-ed on this particular topic, and actually one of the reasons why I want to talk about it because I actually read this op-ed today, entitled "Black Ops 6 is Make or Break for the Game Pass Strategy." And it's an opinion piece by Rob Fahey, contributing editor there at GameIndustry.biz. And I got the $75 billion number from him, by the way, Logic. That's where I got it from. See, he's increasing in number two. Maybe someone should tell him it's $70 billion. But as I mentioned, I mean, I think this is a big test for the Game Pass business model. Is COD going to drive enough subscriptions to maybe offset some of the cannibalization effect of people who would have purchased Call of Duty at $70 on Xbox? Is it going to drive? Go ahead.
Let me ask you this: like, why? Like, I need to understand why each of those questions is a question and why it's pertinent. Like, Xbox made the acquisition. They're obviously following a loss leader strategy, and they have been for some time. Market share and numbers of players mean more to them. Their hardware business is a done deal. So, why do these questions matter?
Well, I think in part because the $70 billion acquisition, they need to make that money back. You know? And we know that the acquisition has had some impact to their strategy, which we talked about. They shifted, right? They've shifted their strategy to move some of their first party games now to, other platforms.
But did that happen because of the acquisition, or was that happening or already happened, or was a preordained conclusion because of where their hardware sales are?
No, I think it's both. I think the hardware sales and the acquisition. And I think the acquisition exacerbated that problem with hardware sales.
So if the acquisition hadn't happened, your hypothesis is that they would have been fine, trailing in third, being outsold almost 2-1 for the remainder of the generation, and wouldn't have pivoted, would have continued to try and get premium titles to the console in order to sell hardware.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But you mentioned like they're not focused on hardware anymore. They're focused on, did you say player engagement?
On player numbers.
Player numbers. Yeah. So this is going to be I think this is the test for them. Like, what are the player numbers going to look like as a result of people in Game Pass, or people going to subscribe to Game Pass? We know that Game Pass is, and I've always thought of Game Pass now as the platform, right? It's no longer hardware. Game Pass is the platform. They want to grow Game Pass subscription numbers. And so I think this is kind of a test to see, can a game really drive higher numbers and engagement in Game Pass for Microsoft, for Xbox? I think that, and then we saw, like early on the year, Hamp, we saw them changing their, changing the pricing tiers. They made those adjustments. Now you have that you can only play Call of Duty, Black Ops 6 and the premium tier now, which is what I think it's $20 a month. I forget. So I guess my question and what I'm thinking is will Black Ops 6 performance, how is that going to influence Microsoft's future game strategy? Like, how are they going to balance Game Pass growth and maintaining Call of Duty's like revenue potential? Like that's the kind of stuff that I'm thinking about as relates to this game dropping day and date into Game Pass. And some of that was, and some of these things were things that I was thinking about, and I think the article I read on GameIndustry.biz kind of just further, got my gears moving even more, on what the impact of Black Ops 6 is going to be in Game Pass.
I just don't think they're. I just don't think that the answers to those questions are particularly impactful.
To Microsoft?
To the industry, but also to Microsoft.
Okay. So why don't you think those things are impactful to Microsoft?
So we go back to the previous quarter's investment call, right? Mm-hmm. Where the quote from Amy the Hood, is, I do think the real goal here is to be able to take a broad set of content, which includes Call of Duty, to more users in more places and really build what looks like more to us, the software annuity and subscription business. Mm-hmm. So now more than any time in the past, Xbox, not just Game Pass, Xbox itself, right, at its root, at its core, is most closely aligned and poised and heading in the direction of being the Netflix of gaming than it ever has been before. And in the past, I've disagreed with that analogy because it was being used falsely and inaccurately, and the equivalencies that were being drawn were not accurate, right? Just in terms of the way the gaming business and gaming properties are vastly different than video properties, and the objective Microsoft was attempting to achieve at that point in time was different than what Netflix was doing. But as of this statement and where they're headed, more so now than ever, Xbox is a service. It's no longer like in the past, I would have thought about it as like a hybrid business model, but it is much more so. And Amy is indicating here that it is a service, and it is aligned, and it's more and more aligned every day with the standard Microsoft business model, which is vastly oriented around service. And I know I pointed out to people 3 years ago when I first came into this circle, right, and walked into a space, and people were in there saying, Microsoft is trying to change everybody's subscriptions. That's how you have to buy Office 365 now. And I was like, well, no, actually you can buy Office 365 like 10 different ways, including, right, just purchasing it outright. You don't get regular updates and things. But at the time, right, in fact, again, one of the problems that I've always had with Microsoft, being with my, associated with my dealings and cognizance of them, like in the business space, is like there's always like 10 different, like if you ever have to sit and listen to a Microsoft sales guy talk to you about like the 10 different freaking SKUs by which you can purchase something, and your eyes just glaze over and roll in the back of your head and you fall asleep. Like that's the problem, right, with their business model. Like they can't just get to like an Apple model where they're just going to sell you a thing one way, right, or 3 models of a thing. But more so now, Amy's saying we're a software annuity and subscription business. And what she means by software annuity is it's annualized franchises, right? Again, along the lines of Call of Duty. What they expect from Call of Duty is for it to drive retention in the subscription numbers in the subscription service each year, based on when it comes around, just like Netflix does, right, when it drops a new season of Stranger Things.
But they're also looking to drive subscription growth too.
Sure, but I don't believe
I don't think they're like, okay, hey guys, we're good at 30 million, let's not lose the 30 million. I think they want to move beyond the 30 million and grow the the subscription business, especially if you mentioned like Netflix. Like, I mean, Netflix, when they release Stranger Things, they release exclusive content. Part of that should drive, even higher subscription numbers.
But the difference is Netflix is in a highly contested, highly competitive space. Mm-hmm. Xbox isn't in a highly contested, highly competitive space with regards to gaming subscriptions.
No, there's other subscription services out there, yes, but no, it's not as competitive as the television movie space, right? But I do think they still want to drive subscription growth. Because because that's going to feed into, like you mentioned, Amy the Hood. She wants her money back, right? I would imagine that's going to feed into earning some of that $70 billion back.
Sure, you always want to make more money,
increasing that recurring revenue. Yeah, go ahead.
You always want to make more money, but my point is that I don't believe that Xbox now is like Microsoft Azure, and it's doggone sure not like OpenAI. I don't believe that it's the critical, strategic, financial driving thing that they used to purport it to be, or that people made it out to be. And I think we've passed the time of when that 110 million subscriber number was a realistic bogey by which like the future of the business was going to be hung on. I don't think Microsoft is fooling themselves. I think Xbox knows that they're not going to get to those numbers.
So you think that internally speaking, they're like, you know what, we're not going to hit the 1%. Maybe and maybe even something like Call of Duty is not going to get us maybe a significant increase in Game Pass subscriptions.
Yeah, I mean,
so the hope is, hey, well, we're going to make money off the backs of PlayStation and PC, because I mean, obviously the game is sold very well on PlayStation. In comparison to the Xbox platform.
I think their interest from a business perspective is to, as quickly as they can, get Xbox to a point of stability and maturity and a line that it's holding forgive the pun. But I don't think that they're expecting that to be like a high accelerator to their business. And that $70 billion investment is done and over with. And I don't think it's the priority on their mind. Like last year, in fact, one of the things that I pointed out was my problem with the acquisition. And Phil Spencer admitted this, as he admits like every couple of months, corroborating one of my statements, that the acquisition was a huge distraction to them. And it was a distraction to Satya, and it's behind them. And I almost absolutely guarantee you, Xbox is not what's keeping Satya up at night. And he doesn't, quite frankly, want to be bothered to a certain extent. His concern is about the race for AI, right? Microsoft is investing on a promise of expending electricity credits on 3 Mile Island's nuclear plant, right? He's not doing that for Xbox, right? And as soon as he did that, now Amazon and Google are running out and investing billions of dollars in small size nuclear reactors. So now data centers, AI, and energy are becoming the next competitive war front. I think what Xbox needs to do and all that's expected is it's going to play out however it plays out, right? But I don't like the pivot that they've done. My belief is that pivot is the trajectory they're going to be on for some time. And I don't think we're anymore in an environment where, like, if Black Ops 6 doesn't hit some mystical number and drive some Game Pass number, that next year we're going to have yet another town hall meeting, right, to discuss a significant change in the outlay of the Xbox business model.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's going to drive another town hall, but I still do think, and part of, and maybe this has changed internally now, but from what I remember, part of the strategy with Game Pass, when the idea of putting content was to make it attractive enough where you would get people that would, come into the service, subscribe, you get that reoccurring revenue, and they just haven't had anything as big as Game Pass, or not Game Pass, as Call of Duty, Black Ops, or Call of Duty in general, releasing day and date in that service. I got to imagine though, Hamp, that like they're probably looking, okay, let's see what the knock-on effect of having a Call of Duty or having a game of this magnitude is going to be on our subscription service of Game Pass. I mean, right. I believe there was some reporting that there was maybe some back and forth debate whether or not, did it make sense for them to release Call of Duty on Game Pass day and date? Do they want to cannibalize, potential sales? What was that going to look like in terms of, impact to revenue would generate? There are going to be enough Game Pass subscribers or new subscribers to offset that. And then, comes and I think one of the reasons why they increased the $20 tier to get Call of Duties to kind of maybe offset some of that. But I would imagine they're probably looking at that, looking at, okay, like what's the impact? Let's see what the impact of this big franchise is going to be on Game Pass.
I don't disagree with you in what I'm theorizing is that, again, and I had this discussion today as we're going through CMMI certification, and we talked about all of the various metrics that we're going to look at. Right, you're going to instrument the business, and you're going to pay attention to that telemetry because that's what businesses do. My point I'm driving at is, so let's say Call of Duty doesn't hit some mystical number. Let's say they don't hit the 110 million subscriptions over X period of time, which again, we knew a year ago, 2 years ago, that they weren't hitting those numbers based simply on extrapolating the trajectory that they were currently on. So my question is, okay, so we're going to watch the number, right? This goes back to KPIs and OKRs, right? The question of whether or not it's impactful to the business, right, in terms of there being an objective or a goal, what is the impact and what do they change if it doesn't hit some mystical number? If the answer to that is we're not going to change anything, then I don't understand how that number is impactful.
I think the conversation may shift to maybe we don't release our big AAA marquee titles day and date in the Game Pass.
So you're believing, so you think they would put Call of Duty into Game Pass and then would try and walk that back?
I mean, they've walked other stuff back. I mean,
they have, but nothing of the order of magnitude of Call of Duty.
Yeah, I mean, I think that. Maybe, I'm just saying, hypothetical. Maybe that's something that they look at. Hey, maybe this is that tough conversation they have. With Phil and company. Hey, you know what? We tried this Game Pass thing. We spent $70 billion on Call of Duty. We wanted it to help drive Game Pass numbers. It hasn't done that. That we need to make that $70 billion up. It's like, maybe we need to rethink this thing. Again, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think that's maybe one scenario that could happen, assuming this thing doesn't really drive whatever numbers. I'm sure they have some number in mind. It doesn't do.
And let's be clear, they didn't walk back day and date. They put it behind a paywall, right? And they paid it that tier, right? It's still available to people. And I think before they would talk about pulling it out of the subscription service, they would re-tier it again.
So you say they would increase the price again before they would,
right?
I don't know, man. I just feel like Microsoft's had this history too of just abandoning ship.
Yeah, but they've put their head a lot further into this sweater than anything we've seen in gaming. This to me is analogous, right? So you go to something like the Zune, right, or the Microsoft Band, or Windows Phone, right? And yes, absolutely, they abandoned those things, but they didn't have standing services around those. I think when you look at their services, I think they're very slow to deprecate. And typically, right, way before they deprecate them, they tuck them underneath some other umbrella, right? They concatenate them with some other service, right? That's, there's lots of additional things that they could do to Game Pass before they call, right? Before they say this, this is over and we're done. There's other services that they can combine with it. There's ad tiers that they can go to. There's other ways that they can do monetization, and they still haven't converged with, right? The whole reason for doing this whole thing is to get this thing to become the Skynet, right, of gaming, and that's to stand up the CB-DOM, and they still haven't done that yet. And at best, they're probably going to try and do that at the outset of the next generation. They're probably a couple of years off from getting all that technology in place. So I just don't. I mean, I get it. I mean, it's an interesting horse race to watch. I just don't necessarily feel that we're like on the precipice of, if X doesn't equal Y, right, in 12 months, then we're going to shift to Z. I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to think that, Hamp. I mean, this is where I might disagree with you slightly. I just feel like because they pivoted so like recently, I feel like they've pivoted quite a bit. And their messaging has seemed to change quite a bit, and then they've also, and I understand, like they seem to have more skin in the game with a $70 billion acquisition than they have with, other things they've done where they've abandoned ship. I just, and again, I'm not saying that, if this thing doesn't do gangbusters within, at the end of the year, they're going to say, all right, we're no longer going to do day and day for big AAA games. It just wouldn't, what I'm saying is it wouldn't surprise me if maybe that's a conversation that ends up happening behind the scenes as a result, but I also disagree with you. Like they could pull some additional levers here too. They could increase the premium tier. There's they could add an ad tier. There's some different things they could do to maybe help even further offset whatever cannibalization effects that are happening as a result of Call of Duty or going to Game Pass, or not driving enough subscription numbers, And so I don't disagree with that. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with some of the comments here in the comment section. Let me grab the super chat here real quick. Donald Brown, the $5 super chat says, I have not forgotten that you picked the Mets to beat us. I ain't forgot it ain't looking too good for your Mets for you Mets fans. Look, man, it's not over yet. It's not over. I'll just leave it at that. Let me see here. Chris Coleman says, what other changes can Microsoft do? They went full multi-platform like ABK was. Once you're everywhere, what else can you do but make more compelling products and hope they sell? Subservices have hit peak. Then Player Plus says, BRAP, why not just launch all games day one multi-platform for the losses of day one titles in Game Pass? So that's why hold on, why not just launch all games day one multi-platform for the losses of day one titles in Game Pass? Well, I think this is what I was saying earlier, Hap. I think this is kind of an experiment for them too. Like they want to see, I really do think they want to see what the impact of having a behemoth of Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is going to mean to the Game Pass subscription service.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, again, I don't disagree that they want to see what happens because that's what you always do. My point is okay. Let's say it does make them do bonga numbers. Let's say that all of a sudden there's an up tilt and suddenly they're hitting a trajectory that says they're going to be at 110 billion or 110 million subscribers by the beginning of next generation. What changes do they make off of that telemetry? Do they continue? Do they go out and make another $70 billion acquisition? Do they buy Take-Two as that one podcast channel suggested?
I mean, that's happening in 2026.
Well, right. I mean, I was told it was guaranteed that was going to happen because it just makes sense.
Yeah. I also went to my kid's school today and gave a speech.
Yeah, I heard you got a standing ovation. What was it exactly that you said to them?
I told them that games should be everywhere.
Oh man, games on every platform?
Yeah, on every screen.
Wow.
I said, look,
wow.
my Yukon Denali has 2 screens in it. Should be able to play games.
You know, you could package it with the same subscription service for BMW owners that allows them to get heat.
Look, I had they gave me a big round. They gave me a big standing ovation. You know, started off first. It started off as a slow clap.
Oh man, the slow clap is the icing on the cake.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying, Logic, about like what does it mean long term? Like and I'm not saying like it's doom or gloom. I'm just again, my wheels are spinning here. I'm thinking about how they're looking at this because like I said earlier, this is the biggest game ever released Game Pass on day one, and for me, I'm really interested too, just from just observing the industry as an observation, like what the impact of the knock-on effect to Game Pass to their business is going to be like by having this game day and date. I'm not going to say there's not going to be any knock-on effect in terms of Game Pass subscriptions. I think there will be. But I'm just curious to see like how long that momentum is going to carry over, in terms of, Game Pass subscription numbers. Are people going to, and I know there's a thing, I know there's churn. I get that, I get that. And I'm sure there will be some churn as a result, but it's more curiosity for me than anything else.
Yeah, and that's where I'm kind of driving to, right? Is that separation of look, I get that a lot of us are rubberneckers and we like to pull over to the side of the road, right, and look at watch the accident right after it's occurred, but like is the real impact.
I like how you said rubber because that's actually so true. If you've driven in DC Metro in rush hour, that is oh shit, oh wait a minute,
or Florida,
or Florida, yeah, exactly.
Like, I mean, if and here's Capote saying, will we see a reaction from Sony if it does well? And that's kind of my point, right? To me, the impact from this, and this is what the people who get all lathered up, right, when these things are going down, like, oh my, like it's going to go so well. Like what they're going to try and predict is they're going to try and say, if this does well and it starts moving the needle, then what they would try and say is that, see, this is proof that it's good for the industry, and the whole industry is going to start doing it, because that's what they've been saying for years, right? That, oh, Microsoft is ahead of the game. They're playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. The guy who was arguing with us was like, I just found it laughable. He's like, 10 to 15 years now, you guys are going to eat your words and realize like that you didn't get it. I'm like, bro, 10 to 15 years, that's a decade of my life. I don't know how everybody else lives their life, but like, I'm not standing around waiting for something to happen in 10 to 15 years.
That sounds like somebody who, generally speaking, has been standing and waiting for something to happen in their own life.
Right, exactly.
Well, maybe if I go to class today in 10, 15 years, I'll be better off. Right, maybe if I pay this bill down, I'll be financially better off in 10 to 15 years.
Yeah. So my thing is like, when we ask these questions, like what is the impact of this that would be significant is if it did that, right? If it made a big enough splash that it really started moving the Xbox business model, and it really started informing the industry that, hey, this is the right thing to do, and other people started doing it. But I don't believe that that's what's going to happen. Well,
Logic, actually, that was okay. So I said make or break. I discussed the break point, right? About maybe it causes them to have a coming to Jesus moment internally, where they maybe go back and revisit Game Pass and the business model. And maybe the neighborhood steps in and say, look, we tried it. Shit didn't work out. We need to figure something else out now, And maybe that's, pulling games day and date. I do think, though, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I say AAA games day and date, like a Call of Duty date. I think to your point, Logic, I think maybe you brought this up. That might be a hard thing to walk back. I know they've done other stuff in the past where they walk stuff back, or they completely have bowed out after making investments. I think about, what was the streaming service they had? What the hell's it called? Mixer.
Oh, Mixer.
Mixer. Yeah. They brought on Ninja and forget the other guy. They paid him millions of dollars, and then like a week later, they're like, okay, we're ditching that business. They spend $9 billion on acquiring Nokia, and then they're like, okay, we're out.
Yes, but what I say about those is nowhere near the level of valuation, right, of what they made here.
No.
And what I would also say is, like, Mixer was it was a service, but it wasn't a revenue driving service, right? It was still an entertainment service. And so when I look at what they're doing with Xbox, again, I go back to what they're doing with Xbox, and particularly where they're headed now, is harmonized with the rest of their business. And from that aspect, it starts what I've been saying for years, right? Which is what will make Satya Nadella sleep better at night is not having this one business division that flipping operates in a radically opposite direction than every single other one of his business units, right? Now it's starting to harmonize and align much more so with Azure, with cloud, with their office and enterprise services, with what they do for cybersecurity, right? The business model is starting to look more and more the same as everything else.
Yeah.
Right. Which means he's likely not to abandon it, and he's likely to not be, all that bothered or concerned by it.
But for me, though, Logic, and I talk about the pivots, and I know I gave examples of Microsoft, but I also, more specifically, are the pivots from Phil Spencer and company. Like Capoto just said, pivot after pivot after pivot. That's why I'm saying, look, it wouldn't surprise me if this thing didn't do well. They're like, okay, you know what? I say do well, by the way. I meant hit whatever internal metrics they have for new Game Pass subscribers and existing Game Pass subscribers, or retention, if you will. They've showed me that Xbox at least has they've pivoted quite a bit. The messaging isn't always consistent.
I agree, and what I'm trying to pitch and have everyone consider is that yes, they have for a period of time they've done that, and now we're in a different period of time, and I'm trying to suggest that everyone not think about this in the same way that we have historically thought about the console war for the last 50 years, and you start coming over to my side and looking at this as a matter of Microsoft business structure. And when you look at things through those optics and you say, right now, I'm not worried about how this thing lines up toe-to-toe with Sony and how this thing lines up toe-to-toe with Nintendo. I'm worried about how this drives my business from a service perspective. And when Microsoft does that, they start to isolate a lot around their own metrics. Their targets start looking at different people, right, and different competitors. And this is my thing that I've been saying for a very long time. I've said for a very long time, I think the console war is over. It's a long done, foregone conclusion. Xbox lost. And I think that they've given a lot of lips.
No, they didn't. Did I tell you what happened at my kid's elementary school today? Come on. I don't disagree with you. I'm joking. I don't disagree with that point, though, Logic. I agree that the console war is over.
And part of the problem, right, with the thing you just articulated was with the messaging, right? Part of the problem is that because of the loyal, rabid, last standing, remaining, nearly extinct component of their fan base, right, because of their behavior, Xbox's messaging has fed that and propped that up. Sometimes out of a necessity for survival, but I don't believe that tether is actually tangible, particularly with regards to, again, their OKRs and KPIs. I don't think that rabid fan base drives a thing that Amy the Hood cares about. In fact,
her money back.
I know, but remember what I've said over the last several months, right? And first of all, I've said that she's pushing them and driving them in that direction, and I've said that she's fed up and she's called a ceasefire to all the BS, right? This no red line thing, I firmly believe, comes from those meetings happening and Phil and Sarah and Matt coming in and constantly saying, you can't do this, you can't do that. Like the fan base will do this. And what she has said is she's thrown the same data numbers back at them that I constantly talk about. How are you going to tell me that the 27 million remaining people on the freaking island, right, are going to continue to drive this business where it goes for you guys to pay me my money back? And if those 27 million people have low ARPU and they're not giving me my money back, then stop coming in here talking to me about what those people are doing for you. Abandon those people. I'm done. I don't want to hear about them anymore.
No, I don't disagree. I want my money back. No, I don't disagree. Like people often cite MAU. You know, I've talked about this quite a bit on this show. It's not MAU, it's ARPU. You know, it's like James Carville once said. It's the economy, stupid. It's ARPU, stupid. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's and by the way, I just want to clarify something real quick. When I say them pivoting and abandoning releasing big AAA games into Game Pass, what I really mean is specifically games like Call of Duty, games like that are like huge revenue drivers for the industry. I know they only own one, but that's what I mean. I'm not saying that they're gonna like that they would pull Forza or Gears from Game Pass. What I really mean is like something like Call of Duty Black Ops 6 or Call of Duty in general. So
yeah. And again, I go back to I don't think they would do that. I would see them putting it at a premium tier and saying, hey, to get to this tier now, it's like, look, we found that we've rolled the service out and not enough people use it, so it's still going to be available, but it's only going to be available. Right, you're going to pay now the whatever it is, 20, 25, whatever.
So
and you're going to pay a $5 kicker for Call of Duty.
So what you're saying, Logic, is that when markets are mature and they can't really, they're not seeing the significant growth, maybe that they'll just monetize the existing customers even more, sell them more things.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder where I've seen that before.
I think you've seen it like everywhere in tech. I know we're saying in the gaming industry, but like that's just like it's not just the gaming industry. It's literally how the entire world works.
Yeah, I kind of say that in jest, but I mean, no, you're right. Like it's when people are like, consoles are dying. It's like, guys, look, they're going to make money. There's a low consumer base that's willing to spend money.
I mean, Spotify keeps raising prices. They haven't given me a doggone extra thing for each time
I know, right?
Raise price. The same music.
Can I get a discount on cheeseburgers or something? Like, can you throw me a bone? Give me something.
Right. Look, there was a time, right, when Apple rolled out Apple Music, right? One of the big, huge gets was, we've got the Beatles catalog, right? And I think there was a time I can't remember. You're right, exactly.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And there was a point where I can't remember exactly where this happened at the time. It may have been before Apple Music. It may have just been them but there was a time where like U2 didn't give its music to like every digital service. And maybe they were selling it, but yeah, but like there's times when those product differentiations make a difference. But as markets mature, right, I think those things become less of an issue. And you raise prices and you continue to monetize and figure out. I mean, we see this with
what you're saying,
Prime.
What you're saying is your product differentiators don't matter as much as markets mature. So what you are saying and what you're confirming is that PlayStation first party games are going to be on Xbox. Got it. I'm joking. I know you're not saying that. I'm just joking. Yeah. Just know that somebody will say that in the comment section.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because apparently we didn't learn from the ATVI acquisition. But if this were PlayStation doing something, then we wouldn't be saying the same thing. We're just negative because it's Xbox.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I will say this on the make side. We talk about the break side. I think to your point, I thought you brought up a great point here, Logic, and I don't disagree with you. And I was going to say something that was similar to the point of, if this does work, like it's going to put the industry on notice. Where now maybe Sony's rethinking, okay, well, look what it did for Microsoft in terms of boosting Game Pass subscriptions. Look at the retention. Look at the recurring revenue by releasing their game day and date. It all, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the only thing that the advantage that Microsoft has, though I should note this, is that Call of Duty is also available on PlayStation, right? But in terms of just subscription numbers, like maybe they look at that too and say, look what Call of Duty did. Big first party game, a popular IP. It did well. It drove even additional ARPU. It drove increased subscriptions. There's high retention now. I think that maybe potentially that's a knock-on effect. This thing, I say this thing, but if Call of Duty is something that's able to drive even more numbers for Game Pass.
Then I look at that like the same chase that the industry is in now, which is either it's build or buy, right? Either we have to encourage continuing to get that thing on our platform to help us move numbers, or we need to build our own. And what people have attempted and tried and proven to have failed to do over the last few years, the last 2 decades, is build a serious Call of Duty contender.
That's not, yeah. I mean, and we've seen that with other live service games where people have tried to make competitors, right? And it hasn't worked. I know that some people have, when the ABK thing happened, some of the concerns that people were having was that this would start an arms race. And you talk about build or buy. Do you think that this would maybe put Sony in a position, or maybe that Sony would be more inclined now to even look at more acquisitions? Or maybe we see more consolidation in the industry as a result. We need to buy this content because we have this subscription service thing that we want to support. It's working for Microsoft. We see what they did. Maybe we need to do this.
And that's what I've contended, right, for years, even before I was on BRAP, right? My prediction is that regardless, as production costs spiral upwards, and as, in my opinion, it becomes, despite all of the sturm and drang about exclusives, it actually becomes more difficult to be anything other than thinly capitalized when you are not closely associated and coupled to a platform business. And whether or not that platform business is a service or the cloud or a hardware platform, my point is that I believe that what we're going to see as we proceed forward is an increased amount of consolidation that starts to centralize around the notion of factions or alliances. Right now, in the past, we would have envisioned those as Nintendo, Microsoft, PlayStation. But it wouldn't surprise me if you see a bunch of the, I'll call them kind of tier 3 publishers, the publishers who are kind of in the single digit numbers of billions of dollars of revenue, that as production costs increase, and again, things become hard for them because they're thinly capitalized, as we saw with Activision, that numbers of them start to merge. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see if in, going back to what our friends always say, the 10-year horizon, it wouldn't surprise me to see in 10 years, right, to see a mega publisher that is composed of what today is 5 or 6 smaller publishers. Because as production costs increase, it's going to be more and more difficult for those people to compete at scale. When you have the consolidation that we have around the industry, again, we had one of the people who in this community who I think is not very intelligent come in here and yell and scream at me when I said that when this merger is complete, now Xbox and Sony will make close to or maybe just over 50% of the revenue in the console and PC gaming space. And that is exactly where we are right now. Right, the two of them combined actually are pretty close to, I think, $60 billion.
Yeah.
Given that Sony was over 30 billion.
Yeah.
So the PC and console industry, not including mobile, the PC and console industry has hovered back and forth and kind of bracketed between, I would say, 80 billion and 110 billion, right through the years of the pandemic and up to now. They've been in the 90s. So now you have 2 platform owners, right, who make up the huge bulk of what the industry makes in those subsegments. And so if production costs increase, then the only way for smaller publishers to contend with that, and again, we look at Activision and Microsoft, and these are the things I said during the hearings. Now you have the Call of Duty behemoth, which I just said nobody has proven themselves to be able to really compete against. Now that thing's going into Game Pass, right? What is an EA to do? With they're trying to mount up this effort to go at Call of Duty with Battlefield. If that doesn't work, right, if that doesn't prove to be profitable, they've built this mega development team that now is bigger than the Call of Duty development team. somewhere along the order of magnitude of 13, 1,400, 1,500 developers. What happens if that doesn't stick the landing, right, and drive the revenue that's needed? Like it's nice to see. I think it's not Hyperscape, but I forget the one that Slow-Mo was excited about, because we're seeing the second iteration come back around. I bookmarked the name of the studio because I always forget it. Maybe it's Splitgate, right? Yeah. So Splitgate's going to come onto the scene. Is it going to be competitive? Is it going to move numbers? It definitely had like a small loyalty base, but like, what does that do when Call of Duty's going into Game Pass?
I mean, I don't think you want to launch a game remotely close. And you may even have some reservations even post-launch if you want to put a game that's in similar, that's within the same genre, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
like you got to contend with that. I mean, it's essentially, it's not free, right? Because you're paying a monthly subscription, but it's like, I mean, eyes are going to be on Call of Duty. Like, how do you get eyes off Call of Duty when it's in Game Pass? How do you compete with that as a developer?
So now we come full circle, right, to all the stuff that I've been saying. Microsoft is this 800-pound gorilla who, forgive me for putting your channel at risk for being demonetized, who is just like the honey badger and like literally like doesn't give a fuck, right?
Honey badger doesn't care. Honey badger
like literally doesn't care, cannot care for years about losing money when it so chooses. Again, I go back to Google and Stadia. Lots of crazy conspiracy theories. Microsoft ran, Stadia out of business, right? With their like money having deals around in the EU with cloud. Like, no, look, these companies who are part of the $1 trillion club, the only thing that causes them to pull out of businesses is when they decide to, right? Apple continued to pump money into Apple TV for years for no reason. No reason. And the only people who were going to tell Apple to get out of Apple TV, talking about the hardware, not the service, right? Because remember, Steve Jobs used to always talk about Apple TV is a hobby for us. The only people who are going to tell them to stop doing that is them. Nobody's going to knock them off their pedestal at that scale. So now we put the whole thread together, right? I say Microsoft can continue bleeding money when it so chooses, right? It's got to be its own internal politics that decide, right, to change that. So they can choose to get Xbox up to a hold even, break even point and not care. Xbox doesn't care. Microsoft doesn't care. It doesn't bother them one bit. But everybody else in the industry winds up being impacted by it. So now you get, right, the pressure to do more consolidation, right? And you get a negative impact on competition. Because again, I go back to things I said during the hearing, which is that, like, why would I bother? And if they stand up this CB-DOM environment that I'm talking about, and I go back to things that I've said on E2KG and things that I've said here, we have this this application of AI to moderate toxic behavior in Call of Duty. And what I said was, great, Scott, like if Microsoft has doesn't have just a bunch of dead brain cells in all of its executives, it will take that and it will market it and it will sell it as a third-party service. And if it does that, now, if I'm Riot Games, if I'm EA, if I'm all these other people, I go, why would I build that myself if I can just, right, build my game in the CB-DOM thing, buy things from this app store, right, to incorporate into my platform and stop the money I'm hemorrhaging off of investment to keep this thing going forward in a fiscal environment where production costs are constantly increasing. So that's the slurry of dynamics that I'm talking about that I think drives us towards greater consolidation, causes Xbox and Microsoft to not care anymore about this 110 million number subscriber bogey, and therefore not change what it does with Call of Duty, regardless of what the numbers generate, because they're headed towards a business that is much more oriented around the Microsoft business. And I think when you consider things from that perspective and don't consider them from the perspective of the console space solely and the platform discussion, I think you'd start to look at things as having, a potentially different outcome.
Yeah, by the way, breaking news, Spider-Man 2 is coming to PC. That was just announced at New York Comic Con. It's going to be coming out January. Hold on a sec. I just had the date. January 30th. There you go. Spider-Man 2 coming to PC January 30th. Let me grab this super chat here from where'd that super chat go? I hope I didn't lose it. From Holamoko 17 with the 100 sec. Says, you know what's funny is that Microsoft hasn't only pivot their fans to ignore the console and transition to PC, but I believe these new Xbox PC gamers are going to go full steam. Microsoft going to lose more Game Pass subs. That's okay. Thank you for that super chat. There was another comment here that I wanted to talk about. I can't find it. Anyhow, so Logic. I mean, I think I don't. God, the idea of more consolidation in the industry, I don't think is good for the industry. I think it would hurt creativity. I think I don't want to see this consolidation of power by two companies. I don't want to see an arms race, and I don't want to see Sony going out and buying more, big studios. I want, go out. I don't think Sony. Again, never say never. I don't think Sony's going to go out and buy a massive publisher per se to lock down, content. But I do think, again, like I said earlier, if this is very successful, Call of Duty and Game Pass for Microsoft, and like you said, kind of puts the industry on notice. Hey, this model works. Then yeah, I think that maybe that conversation happens internally at Sony. They start looking at making more acquisitions.
Well, I was actually not going to take it in that direction. Like I think the notion of arriving at the conclusion that the model works is based on a huge dependency, and that's the case I was trying to build.
Okay.
It's based on the dependency of you having something that is like Call of Duty, and the case I was building was there is nothing like Call of Duty.
No,
there is nothing that sucks the air out of the room to the extent that franchise does.
No, there's not, but there's other, but I don't disagree with you, but there are other bigger franchises. Again, not the size, that are the size of Call of Duty, but there are other franchises out there that are pretty popular that do take a little bit of the limelight when they come out.
GTA. That's
GTA.
Literally that's any. I would say anything that is not a Nintendo property. Yeah. The only thing that I can think of that is of the order of magnitude of Call of Duty is GTA.
Yeah.
And so the case I was actually building was I think going back to where B Money and I have agreed. I think what you're going to see over time is the continuation of the Sony strategies that I think are continuing to prove out to hold them in good stead, which is invest in regional IP. I think the China Hero project, and I think the additional bolt-ons to that we've seen of Africa and other areas in East Asia, and I think there was one other area that I heard them talking about investing in, and yet another Hero project. I think that's going to serve them in good stead to bolster their portfolio. I think
they are in Africa as well. Did you mention Africa? That's
yes.
Another area. Okay,
yeah.
But part of that investment too is to grow the console business as well.
Yes, and I think what you're going to see is the exact thing that I said and that B Money said you would see coming out of the acquisition, which is that what they will do is instead of going to Square Enix, even though Square Enix is doing its thing, right? Instead of going to Square Enix and saying, "Hey, Square Enix, and you make us an exclusive game," they're going to start going to some of these partners and saying, "Can you guys make us 5 exclusive games, right, in a 10-year deal?" And they're going to package that and lock it up on the platform for a longer duration, thereby deriving something that performs on the market in similar fashion to an acquisition, but doesn't have the associated overhead costs and the investment costs that would be associated with directly acquiring those companies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wish Falky was here. He could talk a little bit more about some of the hero projects they have. Or B-Buddy. Because I know both of them have been following those particular projects quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, to your point, GTA 6 would be the other one. I don't think Sony's going to buy, nor do I think Strauss-Zelnick wants to sell Take-Two. I don't see that happening. They print enough money there. But yeah, I don't disagree with you in terms of incubating and building those partnerships and getting these partners, strategic partners for PlayStation to make games, over I think, did you say 10-year window? I think it was 10 years.
Yeah, and I mean that's a hand wavy, statement.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with that. And they're doing it. I mean, they're doing it right now in India and China and Africa. They're trying to, and I think Microsoft's doing that to an extent. I don't think they talk about it as much.
And I don't think they have the same level of commitment. I mean, and yes, they're doing it. In fact, in some cases, we're actually doing it before PlayStation. But what you don't hear about is that being a linchpin to their strategy. And especially what bugs the heck out of me, because I realized this, and I feel like somebody making 2-3 times my salary in California should have realized this, who has an MBA from Harvard. But let's not dwell on that. Like this whole thing about every screen is an Xbox. Again, I constantly go back to but some of those screens are not in America. Some of those screens are in Asia. They're in Latin countries. They're in Europe. And those demographics don't hunger for the same types of games, right, that you are cranking out from your Western studios for a Western audience. They like different things. They have different cultural dynamics. They have different nopes that aren't allowed in their cultures. And you're not going to sell to them in big numbers until you figure that out and solve that problem. And I don't see Xbox, right, putting a heavy emphasis on solving that problem as a core strategic tenet. I don't see it right on the billboard, right, as part of their OKRs that would be driving their business and driving growth. What I see is them constantly grousing about the industry isn't growing and everybody's money hatting and locking up exclusives, and it's unfair to poor old Microsoft.
Mm-hmm. Did you say poor old Microsoft?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that is the most ridiculous thing ever. That argument, a poor $1 trillion company. Poor $1 trillion company. So, I'm interested as to see how, as I said earlier in the show, to see how what the impact of Call of Duty is going to be in Game Pass. Because again, this is the biggest, as I said this earlier, biggest franchise, biggest game to release ever on Game Pass, on any subscription service. I would argue any gaming subscription service, day and date.
And I will voice my siskel to your Ebert. I am not interested. I don't think it's a big deal. I think it is going to be what it is. I think the other plays are going to wind up being more important than that, and I don't think this is going to have a huge impact, whether it does or it doesn't.
Yeah. So you think so you're more interested in the long term then, as opposed to the impact of Call of Duty today? Is that? Call of Duty going into Game Pass to me is a natural foregone conclusion. Yes. That was just a matter of time. At the end of the day, I don't believe that it's going to move big numbers. I think the number I've been quoted as saying is I think the maximum horizon on this is going to be, 30 million at a one hit. And if you don't make that, this is the thing that I said on DPS. If you don't make 30 million gets you to 65 million subscribers. You're still just barely north of 50% of your old 110 million subscriber bogey. So and yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So real quick, do you think that fills a just? Because remember the leaks, like, hey, if we don't hit 100 million or whatever it is by 2027, 3 years, we're going to be having a different conversation about Game Pass, the Game Pass business model.
But Brad, here's where I drive at my conclusion. They've already had that conversation.
You think they've already had that conversation?
Yes. The Xbox business today, post February whatever of 2024, is not the same business as it was last year. They've already drawn that conclusion. And Amy the Hood has already put that gauntlet down. I go back to her quote, what looks to us much more so like a software annuity and subscription model. That label in and of itself, that model, is not how you would have described Xbox in 2020 at the launch of the Xbox Series X and S. That is a statement that to me says, yes, now they are talking about being the Netflix of gaming.
Yeah, like I hear you. I hear you. Logic. I can see that point. Again, but I just feel like they say so many things though, But I don't disagree. Like, obviously things have changed. You're right. Like Amy the Hood, I think you said this earlier, drew that red line. Enough's enough. I think that's a big reason why, they are, they're porting their games over to PlayStation and other platforms. because they need
Yeah,
to.
and just
They need
just
some of
to
those games,
just to clean up the one comment, right? You said, they say like I would tighten that up to the GLT says lots of things, like, wishy-washy, back and forth, talking out of the side of their mouth, mealy mouth, like crap hidden, hidden in their arm behind their back kind of way. But I don't think Microsoft corporate does that.
You don't think Amy the Hood does that? She's
No.
not. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think she's been. I think when she's involved in the conversations, and I'm sure there were some harsh conversations, some uncomfortable conversations to be had there when she stepped in. Yeah, I'm sure that things are pretty clear.
In the internal pivot.
Yeah.
In the internal pivot in the dynamic that we've seen, right? The thing that's driving that, Amy Hood's been there since, just shortly before Phil. So it's not like that new. The difference is that the power dynamic, right, between Hood, Satya, and Spencer has been the Azure, right? So go back before this big Xbox push. Their big push was Azure, and they got Azure to being the number 2 cloud service provider in the world. And then, in order to help drive that and offset costs for that and make that more profitable, they lynched it. They connected it to the Xbox model, right? Now I'm going to do Game Pass hosted out of the infrastructure investment that I've made in Azure, right? And have all this commingling of costs and profit, and that was helpful to them. And so there was a while that they were fine funneling money in that direction. Flash forward to 2024, right? And now the big strategic focus is the race for AI, and to beat Google there and to beat Apple there, right? And to figure out how to deal with NVIDIA, who's supposed to be our partner, right? But is now also a competitor, right? And so now we got to figure out how to keep our enemies close, right? So the difference today in the dynamic is that Satya is going to Amy and saying, I need money to invest in AI. And Amy's saying, great, but we can't do that while we're putting money into Xbox at $70 billion.
But then why do the $70 billion acquisition? Because it's not like AI is new to them.
No, but I would contend AI. I would contend AI is a much different type of player than they've made in the past. And let's also not commingle it with my skepticism about the notion of AI in the first place, and that it's the same crap that they've been doing right for a very long time. We've just relabeled it and repackaged it. They're trying to use AI to drive business cycles in laptops, drive business cycles in PC purchases, drive business cycles in the operating system. And so now it's not just them; it's all of their business partners in the enterprise space and all of their business partners in the consumer electronics space. So it's not just Microsoft. And now their partners are looking at them saying, hey, you're supposed to be helping drive our business models as well. And everything that you've been doing up to this point, right? AI in a lot of ways is the Centrinoification, right, of a lot of their business lines. And what I mean by that is their penchant to periodically, every few of these cycles, right, slap some badge on laptops and tell people that it's like something special and that's the reason why they should buy it.
I mean, I see that internally in my own. I'll say that I see that internally.
right.
Yeah, where it's like Copilot. Oh, yeah, it's like, okay.
Yeah. So my point is, you do the $70 billion to try and drive that model, but in what we're seeing is, right, in the wake of that acquisition, right, it's been, first of all, like direct hands-on exposure to the Activision books, which I think, right, revealed things to them that maybe Activision wasn't totally transparent about, which drove some very harsh conversations, I think, right, in October, November, December of last year, resulting in this, okay, we're done, right, with the years of this crap that it's been. Satya wants money for AI. I ain't giving him money for AI until you guys fix and address this Xbox crap, and you need to stop catering to the 27 million people because those people aren't driving your business, and therefore you aren't able to pay me my money back. So remember, like the thing that I've said, right, and the reason the gloves came off and the no red line and we stopped seeing these things that they previously wouldn't do, like the whole January, February timeline, right, of all the rumors and stuff that were going, Xbox in the past I don't think has ever let, right, that poison kind of taint the well for as long a period as they did until they were finally forced to come to the plate and say something about it publicly. I don't think that's the dynamic that we've seen from them before. So I think in that October, November timeframe, what happened was no timeout, no mas. We're not doing this. Satya wants money. He ain't getting it until you guys change something. I want my money, right? And I don't care what you have to do to get it. I'm not sitting in this corner office with you guys anymore, having this lengthy discussion about what you can and what you can't do. We're done. My KPI is dollars, and you need to meet that. However you do that, close the studio. Like, I don't really give a shit, right? Go figure it out.
So what you're describing is that things are a little bit more cutthroat, and that's why, and that is part of me being a little, like what I said earlier, like, if this thing maybe doesn't do what it needs to do, that maybe there's some other, there's some additional conversations to be had, that might change their strategy again. But we'll see.
And don't forget, they've got a new COO coming in as well, a Microsoft, like a corporate level COO who's coming in to report directly to Satya.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Whose background is she's a former CFO. So now you have too many people sitting at the head table.
More bean counters. Oh my goodness, man. Yeah.
And in general, I think this is I may be leaning on maybe something Falky and I said, or maybe something we agreed with, but like in general, this is not the type of power alignment you do, right? When your intention is not to lean the business, right, and be cutthroat. And my prediction out of that is like this whole thing about, if Call of Duty doesn't meet its numbers, I mean, before any like big change in the business model that I see, I think you would see a change in leadership. I think what's gonna happen when Dieback Hap comes in is that you're gonna see much more of a focus on numbers and objectives and much less heart and fandom, right? Because I think part of the voice track for the last few years is that, well, you can't judge our business solely by like the numbers that we make, right? This is our one remaining consumer facing business, and it's about heart, right, and marketing and customer loyalty. I think the times for those being the metrics are over.
That's over. Yeah. I think that in part that's you don't see Aaron Greenberg around much anymore. You don't see Phil Spencer interacting as much as he used to. I think, to your point, those days are gone. It's about, where's my money? Two-player shareholders don't care about that. No, they don't. And you mentioned change of leadership. I also said earlier, I do agree with you. Like, when you mean change of leadership, you're talking about like Phil Spencer, the Xbox leadership, right? Okay.
Yeah. Look, I think we're seeing strong indications that Sarah Bond is the heir apparent.
I think so too.
And again, Sarah Bond is a Harvard MBA, right? She's an MBA, right? Is her degree. So even though I think out of the MBA, the aspect of her that I don't like is I think, and I often draw analogies. So my master's is in financial management.
Should have hired Strauss.
Well, this is what I'm saying. Right? Like for a finance master's student and an MBA, our curriculums are the same. The key difference is that while the 12 credits or whatever that those guys take in marketing, we take in accounting. That creates a vastly different perspective, right? In how we approach the businesses. And my concern that I've seen from Sarah more and more so now is I feel like she has become the heir apparent, is I feel like she leans often too heavily on some of the
marketing.
The marketing aspect of it, right?
I agree with that. Yeah, every screen's an Xbox. Yeah. What a player! She's from Yale and Harvard Business School. Anyhow, what was I going to say, Logic? You mentioned, change of leadership, but I also, like, to your point earlier, and I think earlier I gave kind of worst case scenario, by the way. But I think they would pull additional levers before worst case scenario would happen. And the worst case, I said, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I've said for a while, I forget what Spencer's age is, but I've said, my prediction is he's out. I won't say a different year than I've said before. I can't remember what exactly I said, but I think he's on his way out of his own accord, or just because he feels like he's done all that he can do or whatever. I don't know that it'll be that much further in the next generation before we see him walk off the stage if he goes on that long. But I think bringing in something like Dieback Hap has the potential to make that departure not entirely voluntary and could happen across a sooner timeline.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of leadership, I mean, Craig Duncan. This was announced earlier Monday this week. Craig Duncan to become head of Xbox Game Studios as Alan Hartman's retiring. And Alan Hartman, for those who don't know, I think he helped launch the Forza series at Turn 10, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so they're bringing in Rare boss Craig Duncan now to take over. But Matt Booty's still there. What does Matt Booty oversee again? I always forget.
I just consider him the software guy. So quite honestly, I'm a little confused by the new guy's title. I think so. So if we look at Bond and Spencer, Bond's title now is actually one of Spencer's former titles before he was promoted to the C level. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm not mistaken, this guy from Rare's title is what Booty's title used to be.
Yes.
Before he and Bond were put on as like the two primary leads to Spencer after he got promoted to the C level.
That is true. So Duncan's going to oversee Halo Studios, formerly 343i, the Coalition, Turn 10, Playground Games, Rare, Obsidian, Ninja Theory, Compulsion Games, The Initiative, Double Fine, In Exile, Undead Labs, World's Edge, and more. That's
so what that sounds like to me, having been involved in similar shuffles, it sounds like there's a chunk of the software business that is going to report to this guy, and then the pieces in there that aren't mentioned are business units that will continue to report directly to Booty.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. By the way, we have like 82 people watching. Please hit that like button if you haven't done so already. Helps people find the channel. But yeah, next Friday, Black Ops 6 releases October 25th. I don't know again if I'm going to be there day one. I might. I'm more interested in the campaign more than anything else. I don't know. I've never been I think Black Ops, the first Black Ops, was the only like Black Ops multiplayer that I played. I think after that I was just like, okay, I'm done. I always prefer the Modern Warfare multiplayer games. Is that kind of been your take too, Logic? Is that kind of why you're not interested in Black Ops, or is it something else?
Something else. I just that actually happened this week. I was playing Call of Duty. I've been back on it for 5 years since the Modern Warfare reboot. I've loved it, and like the small bit of discovery that I've gone through personally as I've kind of changed my gaming habits in this my villain arc as a gamer. And it's been fun. But I was and this year I prestiged. I'm just south of like 600, and prestiging for the 10th time. And I've had a ton of fun with it. But my own behaviors that I've noticed over the last month, I've stopped. I had gone through and like earned a bunch of gold wraps and stuff for weapons, but like I stopped applying skins to my weapons. I barely, cared about like putting stickers and stuff on them. I never bother arming camo anymore. And I think that just kind of accelerated to this week of me feeling like, and I'm not a great player by any means, right? But I was like, I don't think I'm going to get any better at this. And so I'm just kind of, it's fun. I'm still having fun, but I'm not on the same exact experience arc that I had been for those numbers of years prior. And I just came through that and I was like, I think I'm going to shift my gaming focus to some other stuff. And so, right, when I contemplate, onboarding to Black Ops, I'm just kind of like, given that me coming through that decision hoop, I'm just kind of like, why would I? Like, I'm not going to be any better at Black Ops, right, than the previous 5 iterations that I've played, and therefore I don't know what I'm getting out of it. And that's not a knock on Black Ops. That's just me where I am.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I hear you. Yeah, again, like I said, I'm just on the fence whether or not I'm going to try to, whether I'm not going to play it, day one. So we'll see.
So one of the things I want to mention, going back to what we've been discussing for the last hour or so, is a quote that I just put in the chat. Mm-hmm. Is the opening paragraph of the blog post where Satya announced bringing Dieback Hype on board. Mm-hmm. And when you read that, I think you will see the seed sown of all the stuff that I've been talking about.
Yeah, we have the opportunity to reinvent ourselves. And that's what we're doing again today, this AI platform shift.
Yeah, after a decade in an industry where there is no franchise value. Like that, like like I can connect that directly to what's been going on with Xbox, right? What they're saying is like there's been no ROI in continuing to invest in fandom. That hasn't brought us through a competitive environment to where we need to be. That's not driving the business forward. That's not increasing our market share. Right.
No, it hasn't worked for them at all. Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I think that's part of the pivot here, the shift, the February pivot, right? Let's go where the consumers are. I mean, that's been core Microsoft.
Yeah, I mean, he said that 10, 12 years ago when he got rid of Nokia, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Says in that quote, when tech paradigms have shifted, right, and we are seizing this opportunity to bring to reinvent ourselves. And again, what did I say? He talks about AI. And that's what we were doing again today in this AI platform shift. So, like, literally, what he says, right, it speaks to everything that I've been talking about. Like, I just, Dieback Ape is going to come in. I hope I don't know, maybe she and Amy the Hood will become friends.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe they'll become united right in this front about leaning the business up. But like that was her role, like at GE and these other places where she's worked. So this is not me saying that like the Xbox business is going to be closed, but I just think the Xbox business is going to become normalized and it's not going to be like exciting anymore. They're going to become a service.
Some people are arguing that it's not as exciting anymore. Like I've seen that. I've seen people talk about that.
Yeah, it's a business.
It's a thing. Yeah. Also, the best value in gaming logic.
Well, look. To not make a joke about it, right? But despite everything that's going on, explain to me why Microsoft is one of the top 5 vendors in revenue for cybersecurity, right? Because it adds value, right? Why do people buy Office 365 bundled, right, and run it on Azure?
Yeah, because it's value. Yeah,
it's value. Yeah,
I see. I mean, I see it where I'm at today. The bundling of services. I see it. The big push of Copilot. Integrating that across business lines, and not just the push from Microsoft, push internally too.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple of people mention, Blake in the chat is saying, they will still be in gaming as a publisher. Somebody else mentioned that, they'll go third party. And again, I'm not. This isn't me disagreeing with you. This is me reinforcing what you're saying, but pushing you past they will. I've argued for a very long time. Stop saying they will. They are a third party publisher, and they have been for some time.
Yeah, people push back at me when I say that. I'm like, no, guys, they're a third party publisher now, who just happens to own a platform in the Xbox hardware.
Right. That is the paradigm within which they're making decisions. They are making decisions around an operating model, a ConOps, right, of the fact that their games go to other platforms, and sometimes as a priority over their own, because their own only has 27 million people on it.
Yep.
Right. Plus whatever additional consoles they've sold since that number came out.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think they're over 30 million now. But yeah. Yep. That's a great point. All right, Logic. That's all I have for topics today, sir. Good conversation as always.
I'm glad you came through it. I could tell you were taken a little aback by my disagreement with you and trying to push you in a different direction. But I think we came through it okay.
Well, I mean, this is why we have conversations. Because I could have easily done what a lot of people do. He's wrong.
Could have posted some emojis.
I could have been like, hey, you know what, Logic, just hold the L.
Yeah, that's Cap.
Yeah, that's Cap. I could have said that. No, but I'm it's and I know I'm joking here, but no, honestly, like these are the kind of conversations we need to have. I think a lot of the times people are like, oh, I disagree, without listening to the other person and trying to figure out how they got there. Why are they, how do they arrive to this particular opinion or perspective, right? I think that's important. I don't think people do that enough, you know? And I think we can often, we often just, we see it in politics, God, all the time. But in gaming, we see this a lot where people just, oh no, that's an L, you know?
I don't know. You know, I've lost the thread on where education is, particularly in this country. Like I grew up with it being heavily emphasized to me. You have to show your math. No, it's not. Even if you get the right answer, you can't just jump to your conclusion.
No.
But we seem to have eked out of the conversation this whole notion of showing your math.
No, you don't have to do that anymore. That's the problem. It's you said hand wavy, I think earlier, a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah,
it is very much hand wavy across the board. It's never, and it's remember I remember in school, like, show your math, and oh God, I used to hate that. Well, show me your math. How did you arrive to that conclusion? What did you mean by that? Remember who, what, where, why?
Oh yeah,
drilled into my head. Who, what, where, why? I don't. We're not doing that anymore.
And I further, right, and again, this causes me to question a lot of things, like, because I also feel it was heavily reinforced to me, and I finally started understanding the metric and what it drove. When you get to that point in your educational track where you start getting more credit for walking through your logic in the Socratic method than coming up with the right answer. Right? When the burden of the points shifts to showing that you actually have a thought process behind how you're processing this information and this data. So it just leads me to believe that, like, the people that, quite frankly, we wind up conversating, not members of this panel on this show, because I think we are uniquely different from a lot of the YouTube Twitter circuit. It leads me to believe that I guess those people didn't go through, like, those discipline tracks, because they seem to put no value or credit on, you know, people actually talking through their logic. And as you mentioned, right, telling me how you got there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's part of the issue. It actually, like, all, you know, I know I mentioned, I tend to bring up the movie Idiocracy a lot. And I say kind of like, oh, we're heading towards idiocracy. And some people probably think that's a joke, but I really do believe that. It's concerning. It's concerning to me because I often think that, you know, outside the gaming conversation, that people are making life choices without really thinking things through. You know, things that could actually really have, like, impacts, negative impacts to them potentially. You know, without walking through the math, and that's concerning.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunately how people arrive at conclusions, and I'm not getting political because I think this is very much true in the gaming space. It's how people get through arriving at conclusions that certain people have their best interests in mind when they clearly don't. They're just interested in you for monetization.
Oh, I mean, we see that with
subscriber numbers.
I say that the pundits. I mean, we see that all the time. I could name some names. You know, one guy saying that Take-Two is going to be bought in 2026. You know.
Well, it was a really good point. And again, I'm not getting political. This example is going to sound political. It's not meant to be political. It's just that this person, like, their job was in the political space. I saw a person mention the other day that, like, you know, let's all take a pause and think about Rush Limbaugh. Right? And, like, does anybody talk about him anymore since he's passed? And the answer is no.
No.
And so you look at these people who are focused on outrage, right? And driving wailing and gnashing of teeth and Sturm and Drang, right? And getting people lathered up and stirring the butter, right? And you're kind of like, what is that person's legacy? Like, how are they going to be remembered? You know, it factors very heavily to me, quite frankly, that the times that you mention, you know, not just you, but other people like Ramon and other people, and they mention Optimus Code.
Well,
like, yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, it's funny. You coming in the show earlier and questioning my math, I guess. That's what Code used to do. You know. But Code was doing it because he wanted to get you to think about how you arrive to a particular conclusion, or kind of flesh out your whatever it is your whatever hypothesis you were presenting to him. Like, how did you arrive to that? You know, what's the thought process here? He would do that, and it would lead to very good conversations. You know, Sometimes, Code and I would eventually come to agreement. Sometimes we wouldn't, but it was okay because we had a conversation. It wasn't like, Code, hold that L, or Code, you're capping. It wasn't like that.
Well, this is like I often get frustrated because like the environment I grew up in, there was value on the Socratic method, right? And participating in it, and there's a value that you get out of it. The value part in a good chunk of the value is just because you're forced to think, right? Because you're forced to articulate, and that has knock-on effects to the rest of your life, right? I don't go into my bosses. My boss and I often disagree. Right?
You don't say.
And he often crap, I don't know why that happened. He often says, well, why do you think that? And that's not what I think, and that's not my direction. And I'll say, because of this, right? Because I'll lay out the case, right? Because I hear what you're saying, and I can definitely come off the square, but this is where I think we are. I don't think this person, you and I were talking about interviews earlier today. I'm like, I understand what you're saying about like the pertinence of that skill set to this job, but my evaluation is that this person's not coming here for this job. This project's like a year. And I'm thinking, therefore, I need to be looking at, what are they doing for us as a business thereafter, right? What is their strategic participation? And he's like, no, you're right, right? And I'm not saying that I need him to agree with me, right? But my point is that, as I often say this about engineers, and engineers, unfortunately, you guys come through a lot of our careers thinking that, once I've been in the game for 20 years, I can just walk into a room and wave my hand and assert that this is the way electricity works, right? Or this is the way code works. And I'm here to tell you, no, you don't. Like, in fact, the more senior you get, the more you have a burden and incumbency upon yourself to actually come into a room and explain that what you're saying is valid, because that's the expectation of you being a domain expert. And so this whole notion that like we have all these discussions and these arguments and people just skate by, right? All the things we talked about during the acquisition just totally skate by the fact that that Microsoft is a multi-trillion-dollar company with much different market share and adjacencies and overall dynamic, right, in the overall business space than Sony, who's a $150 billion company, and people totally skate by that and they say, oh, well, it's fine when PlayStation does it. And I'm like, it's fine when PlayStation does it because they're not operating at the same scale. Right? But I don't know. It is what it is.
Yeah, different companies too. That's the other thing. Different companies, like you said, different OKRs. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, Mr. Bigglesworth came in and said, my voice, I don't know. Mr. Bigglesworth, my voice sounds familiar to you.
Yeah, that's, yeah. It's, yeah. No, it's just, it's, for me, it is a little scary. Actually, to your point about the kind of the complaining, if you will, in the gaming space. We talked about this on Wednesday. A lot of the negativity and stuff. I'm like, I don't understand it. What I call outrage culture. I feel like it's, for whatever reason, it's just really it's got its hooks into the gaming community, and I think it's unfortunate because it takes away from the enjoyment of games. And gaming's supposed to be gaming's an entertainment medium, it's supposed to be fun, enjoyable. I don't understand the outrage. It's odd to me. Maybe because I'm old. I don't get it. It's just and there's so many. We talked about so many great games out right now. Like I think as a gamer, why are you outraged? Why are you so mad? There's so much great content out there. I don't know. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah. Yeah, what's funny is, we talk about as you go through life and you go through transitions, and it's super funny to me how, I was in one line of work in the earlier part of my career, and then I transitioned to, the technical and financial space that I am in now and have been for, a long period of time now. But it was funny to me as I started shifting the people that I socially interacted with, and how I didn't realize when I was in one community, one professional track, I didn't understand how the way the things that were normalized amongst us from a humor perspective were not funny to people outside of that cultural group. Like, it took me a while to finally hear, the things you do, like those aren't funny. right?
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean? That used to like send us over the edge like all the time. But like, and in fact, there's a microcosm of that, right? Like guys and movie quotes. Like guys, it takes a long time for you to get to an age for you to get right around social groups, like with people who like, yeah, that whole movie quoting thing, like that doesn't like everybody else doesn't find that funny.
Yeah, it's not funny, yeah.
It's like totally like two people doing inside baseball, except you guys do it like all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it starts to piss people off. So that's just
you walking around the office yelling shake and bake just isn't fun.
Right. Yeah. So my whole point is this notion of how people push for this outrage where I think some of it comes out of this dynamic of it's fun to shit talk stuff, right? And particularly when you're around like an all male environment, it's fun to have this super sarcastic, cynical view of the world and to basically like despise everything, right? But I think it takes a tough time to realize like the vast majority of the world doesn't really necessarily operate like that. And it's become catalyzed within the social media space to where, right, again, there's all this negativity and outrage, and I'm like, normalized human beings who aren't sociopaths don't function that way.
No, I don't disagree with you. Like it's the and to be outraged and angry over video games, and again, it's an entertainment medium. It's supposed to be fun. I think if you're not having fun, I think you're doing it wrong, or maybe you shouldn't be playing video games. I don't know. It's just weird. It's weird to me. It's weird. I don't remember this much anger and outrage over video games when I started playing video games. And I've noticed it more. It's actually become even more toxic over the last couple of years. Because even when I first signed up on X and I became I started getting involved in the podcasting circuit, if you will, and involved in gaming Twitter. There was toxicity. It wasn't as bad, but it's gotten a lot worse, and I don't get it. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fun. It's not that serious. It really isn't that serious. So, anyhow. All right. Logic, I don't know if you want to be found, but if you do, let everyone know they can find you. Leave it up to you, good sir. I'll take that as a no.
Yeah. The people who know me, like you guys know where you can find me on Twitter. Yeah. I'm mostly oriented around just posting game clips and not really talking to anybody about games. So, but if you do want to hear me talk about games, you can swing by the Enough to Keep Going podcast, weekly video game podcast, Sunday nights we've recently revised the time, 8 p.m. Eastern time.
All right. And if you want to give me a follow on Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days, BRAP_podcast. And we do our Wednesday night show every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we'll be back next Wednesday. And everyone, have a great weekend and have fun playing video games. If that's on your to-do list for the weekend, please have fun playing video games because that's ultimately what it's about. It's about having fun. And we will catch you next time. Remember, next week, Black Ops 6. And I forgot the release date for Dragon Age. I got to pull that up again, but I know Dragon Age is releasing as well. So we're out. Thank you again, everyone, for watching. Please hit that like button. If you're new, consider subscribing, hitting the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. And we'll catch you next time. Thank you.